Republican support for tariffs surges. Surges. This is so huge. It's just the remaking of politics. It's amazing to me. Amazing. I never ever would have thought I would be in a Republican Party and supporting that, who is advocating for high tariffs. Dude, it's crazy to me, and it's freaking wonderful. So check this out. I want to show you guys something here. We're gonna go to Breitbart, and there's a specter haunting the Republican Party. The specter of William McKinley. The Republican Party has firmly reestablished itself as a party of tariffs, marking a sharp departure from the free trade consensus that dominated its economic philosophy in the late 20th century. New polling data shows that GOP support for tariffs has surged over the past year, even as the Democrats have moved in the opposite direction. What was once considered a Trump-driven deviation from the free trade consensus has now become a foundational pillar of the Republican Party, a modern revival of the McKinley-era GOP, which championed high tariffs as a means to fortify American industry. Yep. Check this out. The shift in Republican views on tariffs has been dramatic. Just a year ago, only 38% of Republicans supported increasing tariffs, and now 51% do. And just 5% of Republicans want tariffs lowered, while Democrats have opposition to tariffs has hardened. And we're aligned with the population. 57% of voters, not just Republicans, of voters now view tariffs as an effective tool for both domestic and foreign policy. Yep, 100%. 78% of Republicans would support higher tariffs, they say, even if they result in higher consumer prices. Do they do that? We'll talk about it. Furthermore, 54% of voters believe tariffs will help secure economic concessions from other countries. Yep, exactly. Despite media narratives about a tariff backlash, the polling suggests a majority of Americans see tariffs as strengthening U.S. trade leverage. Yep. By the way, the Democratic Party's approval is at a record low 36%, whereas the Republican Party, now the party of tariffs, is seen much more favorably than Democrats. Historically, the Republican Party was defined by support of high tariffs. Yep, from Abraham Lincoln to William McKinley. The GOP advocated for trade policies designed to protect domestic industries. 100%. Check this out. Regarding the potential increase for consumer prices. All right. High tariffs had not prevented deflation from happening from 1873 to 1896, according to Douglas Irwin in this book, which I finally bought. I said I got to get it because what I was doing was just printing off the various PDFs, printing them off, and then taking notes. Interesting. After decades of deflation following the Civil War, where we had high tariffs, consumer price index rose 20% from 1899 to 1913. Of course, the tariff was not responsible for this policy. Why? Because the U.S. was on the gold standard. Inflation appeared in the late 1890s because of an increase in gold. They had found more gold in Australia, South America, South Africa, something like that. The tariff was not responsible for the rising price level, as evident from the fact that every country on the gold standard, including free trade Britain, also experienced rising prices. All right, check this out. An import tariff simply raises the prices of imported goods, not overall consumer goods, imported goods. People think, I was watching this guy on the news yesterday, I was like, dude, he said, oh yeah, tariffs increase the price of prices. No, it increases the prices of imported goods. It doesn't lead to that, it increases the price of domestically manufactured goods. It enables domestic firms to capture a larger share of the market. Interesting, is it not? Yes, it is. What happened with the high tariffs back in the late 1800s? Well, they did a wonderful job in increasing domestic manufacturing. So much so that the people benefiting from the tariffs, the large corporations, all of a sudden said, we don't want the tariffs anymore. But you know who did want the tariffs? Check. Import tariffs may even have a ability to allow smaller, less efficient firms thrive. So who wanted the tariffs kept in place? Not the big conglomerates, and that did not happen because of tariffs, by the way, just didn't. But what happened was a smaller, less efficient, less economies of scale, as we say in economics, wanted the tariffs remain to be protected so they could keep themselves going as opposed to competing with foreign goods. All right, so we have this massive change in basically Andrew Carnegie and whatnot saying, oh, we want the tariffs reduced because they want to put more exports out there because they had consolidated their position. They had paid Americans higher than anyone else in the world. They were the only game in town now. They were efficient at it because they were able to basically buy their competitors. And this is where the FDR, not the FDR, the Roosevelt trust busting happened. It had nothing to do with tariffs. So, but anyway, long story short, and they wanted to drive out their competition. Foreign and domestically. Yeah, right on it. But the local firms, the domestic firms, they needed the tariff protection because they couldn't hardly compete against the foreign imports, never mind the domestic huge conglomerates. Right. So anyway, what happened was the Republicans, so there's a lot of, Ida Tarbell, who I'm a huge fan of, who has written a book on the history of Standard Oil and shows how just dastardly the Rockefeller clan was. Anyway, she was against tariffs because she said it hurt the local consumers by raising prices. The evidence is weak on that. It might be a little bit, but weak. Just because it raises the prices on imports doesn't mean it raises the prices altogether. And we just see that by the great deflation that happened from the end of Civil War until 1899. Anyway, so unable to put forward fresh arguments to justify existing duties. So the Democrats and the progressive Republicans who wanted free trade were starting to make headway here with just saying, oh, tariffs are hurting us, Ida Tarbell and whatnot. The Republican establishment exploited the ever-present fear that reducing tariffs would expose large segments of the economy to a flood of imports, driving firms out of businesses, workers out of jobs, and wages down to lower levels. This is in the beginning of the 1900s. All right, so check this out. Indeed, political support for tariffs was found not among the big businesses, but among the many small manufacturers who were most vulnerable to foreign competition. So I just want to show you what I posted on X today. I said, it turns out the Republicans were right once again. I just said what? Facing growing opposition to tariffs, the Republican establishment exploited the ever-present fear that I just said. Now, the above was from the 1900s, the early 1900s, when huge tariffs had been in place for decades. But below is what happened after the free trade ideology, starting with Carter, had become dominant in the latter part of the 20th century. Real wages have increased by all of 0.25% a year since 1979. Right there. Real wages, 1979 to here. 0.25% real wages have increased. Real means adjusted for inflation. And I just say, indeed, some have got rich off this scheme. In fact, anyone with the ability to invest in domestic stocks have too, but these gains are transitionary, not permanent. You cannot import your way to prosperity for long, which is what we've been doing for the last 40 years or so. Imports have taken over. What we've done is we've imported labor and exported jobs. Didn't I say that in here? I thought I did. Yeah, right here. Real wages have increased by all of 0.25% since 1979 as jobs have been exported and labor has been imported. And again, if you've been able to get in the stock market, you're freaking loving it. That is not permanent. You cannot continue to export your your jobs and import your labor forever. There will come a time when it ceases. Probably after, maybe you get it for 40 years, but you're not getting it for another 40 years. Because look at us, we no longer produce enough steel to even build our own ships. It's insanity on steroids. And the Republican Party is seeing this. And they're going back to the days of tariffs being a good. Now, you can have reciprocal agreements. We're going to trade with Turkey. They'll reduce their tariffs. We reduce our. I get up. That's fine. But tariffs as a whole are a wonderful economic maneuver to increase economic nationalism. It's just a fact. And just because people think tariffs raise the price of goods, the evidence just is not there. And Trump recognizes this. He sees that American people kind of get it. They get it. They might not have the PhD. They might not. Look, Douglas Irwin, I'm not saying is an advocate of tariffs. In fact, I've seen some videos where he's not. But the facts are they worked in the 1800s, 1900s. Absolutely. That's 100. Jimmy Carter, by the way, was a big fan of free trade. A lot of people think it's Reagan. No. Watch this. Carter was a big fan of free trade as well. Look at this. While Carter's campaign carefully crafted his public image as a humble peanut farmer and a Sunday school teacher, His defining views on foreign economic policy were established by the Trilateral Commission by David Rockefeller, who is CEO of Chase Manhattan Bank, which is why you need to read Ida Tarbell's The House of Rockefeller, because these guys are evil, dude. In fact, David Rockefeller, check this out. The Trilateral Commission's primary composed of representatives from international business, banking, and finance sectors, which had grown in strength and influence over the preceding decades. The goal was to create optimal conditions for foreign investment and the free flow of capital in an increasing globalized economy, rather than relying on what it saw as outdated national frameworks that advocated for greater policy coordination among the dominant industrial regions of North America, Japan, and Western Europe. Yep, and these guys are freaking scumbags. Here's David Rockefeller in his own writing, his own book. Some even believe that we, the Rockefeller family, are a part of a secret cabal working against the best interests of the United States. Characterizing my family and me as internationalists and of conspiring with others around the world to build a more integrated global political and economic structure, one world, if you will, if that's the charge, I stand guilty and I'm proud of it. We are on the verge of a global transformation. All we need is the right major crisis right here. We are grateful to the Washington Post, the New York Times, Time Magazine, and other great publications whose directors have attended our meetings and respected their promises of discretion for almost 40 years. It would have been impossible for us to develop our plan for the world if we had been subject to the lights of publicity during those years. But the world is more sophisticated and prepared to march towards a world government. The supranational sovereignty of an intellectual elite and world bankers is surely preferable to the national autodetermination practice. And this is from his own words, man. Whatever the price of the Chinese Revolution is obviously succeeded not only in producing more efficient and dedicated administration, but also in fostering higher morale and community of purpose. The social experiment in China under Mao's leadership is one of the most important and successful in human history. Dude, these are the globalist bankers. And he's not Jewish. Rockefellers are Baptist. John, the patriarch, whatever, is Baptist. So stop this freaking anti-Jew stuff. It's not Jewish. It's globalist cabal who hate their national origins. Has nothing, I mean, it might have something to do with some religion. I don't think it does. I think that's just silly. Rockefellers were not Jews. They're still globalist cabal. You know, maybe the freaking Rothschilds are Jewish. Doesn't mean that Jewish is what leads to this stuff. I so hate that stuff. I hate it. It's not that. These are secularist, and I say humanist, but people think, oh my goodness, we can control the world. We don't want that blue collar guy in Eastern Tennessee. We're going to send him off to war. That's freaking insane. And this is why Trump is just hated because he was never invited, man. And he's pissed. I love it. All right, God bless. We'll see you. Smash that like button.